So today, let's talk about the story of King David, an incredible warrior, a poet, a king. He had this one single magnificent ambition to build a permanent, glorious home for God. But his grand vision came with a flat-out divine rejection.
All right, so let's dive right into the central mystery here. Think about it. You've got this devout, powerful king. He's at the absolute height of his influence, with all the resources of an entire nation at his fingertips. So why? Why was he forbidden from building the one project that meant more to him than anything else?
You can just feel the passion in his words, can't you? This wasn't just some political move or about building a monument to himself. No, this was deeply personal. It was this driving, heartfelt desire that he had. So what was it? What stood in his way? It wasn't politics, and it certainly wasn't a lack of resources. The answer, according to the source material, came directly from God, and it made a very, very clear distinction. And there it is. The message couldn't have been clearer. David's entire life had been defined by conflict and war. Now that's what made him a successful king. He built his kingdom through battle. But it's also what made him, well, spiritually unfit to build a house of peace. It's a really fascinating idea, right? The difference between the qualities you need to forge a nation versus what you need to build its sacred heart. And the contrast here is just so striking. See, the builder of the temple was not supposed to be a man of war. He had to be a man of peace. And that role, well, that fell to David's son, Solomon, whose name is actually linked to the word for peace. His reign was destined to be one of rest, of quiet, the perfect atmosphere for a project this sacred. So, did David just give up on his dream? Absolutely not. Not even close. Instead, he pivoted. If he couldn't be the builder, he would become something else. The master architect, the ultimate preparer. He poured all that passion into creating this incredible legacy of preparation. And his vision for the temple didn't shrink one bit. If anything, it got bigger. He wanted this to be a building of legendary beauty, something famous throughout the world. His goal was basically to make it so magnificent, so perfectly planned, that all his son had to do was assemble the masterpiece. Now, when we say extensive preparations, that is a massive understatement. David personally provided 100,000 talents of gold. To give you some perspective, a single talent was about 75 pounds. We're talking about nearly 4,000 tons of gold. Today, that would be worth hundreds of billions of dollars. It's just mind-blowing. But he didn't stop there. He also set aside 1 million talents of silver. That's about 34,000 metric tons. The sheer scale of what he personally provided is almost impossible to wrap your head around. He was pre-funding the entire project on a colossal scale. And beyond all the gold and silver, David stockpiled so much bronze and iron for things like nails and fittings and all the structural stuff that they literally couldn't even weigh it all. The supply he gathered was, for all intents and purposes, limitless. And the logistics of this operation must have been staggering. He had stonecutters preparing dressed stone right there on site. He arranged for a supply of these incredible cedar logs from the famous forests of Tyre and Sidon, and the supply was so vast it couldn't even be counted. But this wasn't just about stockpiling materials. David also assembled the human capital. We're talking about a literal army of skilled workers, stonecutters, masons, carpenters, and expert craftsmen for every single type of metalwork. The workforce was so huge it was described as being beyond number. He had everyone and everything ready to go. So the blueprint is done, the resources are gathered, and now it's time for maybe the most important part of David's whole plan, passing the baton. This part of the story is all about that deeply personal handover of responsibility from a father to his son. So here, David formally charges Solomon with this monumental task. But listen, this is so much more than just a royal decree. It's a blessing. It's a father confirming his son's destiny and offering his complete and total support and faith. And the advice David gives is just incredibly clear, almost like a simple 3-part guide for success. First, go and have success. Build the temple. Second, ground everything you do in obedience to God's law. And third, face this enormous task with strength and courage. Don't be afraid. Now, David was a brilliant leader. He knew that a project this massive couldn't be done by one person, not even a king. So his final act of preparation was to turn his personal dream into a national mission. This was an absolute masterstroke of leadership. He issues a direct command to all the leaders of the nation. He doesn't just ask for their help, he orders it. And what this does is it ensures that Solomon begins his reign with a unified leadership team that is already committed to the project from day one. And you gotta check out his motivation technique here. He doesn't just bark an order, he gives them a powerful reason why. He reminds them of the peace they all enjoy, he frames the whole project as an act of devotion, and then he calls on them to dedicate their hearts and souls to the work. He's really galvanizing them into action. So what's the big takeaway from all this? This story really makes you rethink what a legacy even is. David's greatest achievement wasn't a building with his name carved on the front. No, his true legacy was the selfless, meticulous, visionary preparation that guaranteed the success of the next generation.
And that leaves all of us with a really powerful question for our own lives. David's story is just a masterclass in leadership, in succession, and in humility. It challenges us to think beyond our own ambitions, and it asks a pretty crucial question. What are we building and preparing today for a future that we might never even see?